I have been trying to put the cart before the horse. I constantly say that to build a real black community, we need to have business, business, business. Well, I was being too general. We don't need every black person to be in business. It would be great, but unnecessary. What we need is only 10% of the black population to be in business. Just 10%. And I've said this before. With that 10%, all of the woes, struggles of black people in America would disappear. Now that sounds naive, but most blacks do not understand the power of a businessman. Unemployment in the black community would be a thing of the past. Bad schools would disappear overnight. Business people do not tolerate certain things. A business person would automatically be down at City Hall making demands that a grocery store clerk wouldn't even think of. So I just want to reach that 10%. That's not even a whole lot of black people. That's literally 1 in 10 black folk. So let's start from the beginning. Entrepreneurship. That's what I should have been talking about from the beginning. Would you like to be an entrepreneur? Your first step to being one is declaring to yourself to be one. Now, I said in my How to Be a Millionaire in 10 Easy Steps exactly that. Declare it to yourself. Let's begin with the theory behind entrepreneurship. One of the repeated lessons from actual entrepreneurs is the lesson of sacrifice. Sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. If you read the biography of many entrepreneurs, they all say they started out by sacrificing. And we're not talking about no Sharia law beheading. We're talking about first world sacrifices that millions of people do without anyway. What's that? Removing luxury, removing distractions, removing entertainment. Now I hear some of you saying, well, I can't do without my Walking Dead, Real Housewives, WB. What about doing without TV entirely, for good? I hear some of you saying, I have to have the latest phone. It is needed for business. What about not having not only not the latest, but even years old? 10-year-old car, 10-year-old phone, 10-year-old clothes. I saw a motivational poster, motivational for entrepreneurs, that said, entrepreneurs are the ones willing to do without what most people won't. And that's the sacrifice that you have to be willing to go through. Black people, you want to struggle? Be willing to stay up late, get up early when everyone is asleep. Be willing to read 4 newspapers to just be on top of the news for that day when people around you barely read headlines of the top story. Be willing to educate yourself above and beyond even those who call themselves self-educated, including reading every book on the subject and become an expert in the field, not to show off, but just so you are ahead of everyone in the field. It is the entrepreneur mindset that you're trying to achieve. Entrepreneurs think totally different from the rest of the population. Now let's stop for a second, and I want you to seriously ask yourself, are you willing to think about things selfishly as an entrepreneur instead of a Christian, a patriot, a liberal, a conservative? What's the difference? I'm not just talking about being just a businessman. I'm talking about being total risk. I'm talking about jumping in where others fear to put a battleship. A businessman runs a business. An entrepreneur buys and sells businesses. Sometimes the entrepreneur comes up with the business idea. The difference is he's not married to the idea and will sell it at the drop of a hat, while the businessman will go down with the ship or ride it to the top. So is the entrepreneur poor then because he lets stuff go? No. By the time the businessman has ridden the hoverboard idea to the top, the entrepreneur has purchased 10 magnet companies that supplies all the hoverboard companies in the nation. And that's the thinking of the entrepreneur. It's sacrificing also so you can see far into the future where no one is even standing, nor even looking. Just think, some of these old investors learned Chinese just so they could invest in China. The guy that invented the pet rock became rich. The guy that boxed and shipped the pet rock, the Cabbage Patch Kids, Tickle Me Elmo, became ridiculously wealthy. And none of you even know his name. Think about this. There are UPS drivers that are millionaires. Why? Because they're entrepreneurs. They own several routes and lease the routes out to other drivers. Speaking of truck drivers, some are millionaires too, and it has nothing to do with driving a truck. They came up with an idea and built on it surrounding trucks, not driving trucks. But it comes back to sacrifice. Are you willing to do things others won't do? Are you willing to go without today, this year, these first 5 years, so you can be stupidly wealthy later? And are you married to a woman with the same vision as you or better? A woman that trusts you enough to trust you have a vision of what the future holds? Listen to this. Carnegie was almost out of the oil business, and his wife was threatening him daily, and the bill collectors were after him because he signed with Vanderbilt and he demanded a crazy deal to ship his oil. He almost became a millionaire overnight. As a side note, had that deal not been made, we'd probably be in flying cars by now. Had the wife left him, had his workers left him, had the bill collectors got him, we'd be all the Jetsons right now. Oil became so cheap that some inventions were mothballed willingly. Vision, risk, sacrifice. Entrepreneurship. You sacrifice till you get what you want. My early childhood was spent going through sacrifice. It was forgotten when I was sitting in mansions with servants around me. There are those who will say all manner of things about you when you're in your sacrifice phase. Don't worry. When you're in your luxury phase, not only will they not say anything to you, they'll talk behind your back. That's the way of the conservative human. Yes, humans are by definition conservative. They go along to get along. Entrepreneurs are not. We're not talking politics here. But finally, again, are you really willing to be an entrepreneur? You might have to hold opinions that right now you'd hate to have. You can hold on to your identity, but business comes first. Keep that in mind. Are you willing to sacrifice some of your ideals to be an entrepreneur? And don't worry, no one is going to come ask you to sell your soul. As an entrepreneur, your way of thinking is just going to change. I also warn you, you're not going to see politicians the same way too. They will become obstacles, not helpers. Even if you buy them and have them in your pocket, they will still be stumbling blocks to you. Are you willing to put up with that? Thank you for watching the Shakaama Live Show.